chance to review those questions, comments, or edits? That the motions to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved and seconded.
Seconded.
That's the way I should ask the question. Motion and a second. Yeah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next we have unfinished business. Update on enhancements to Alex Renew's payment assisted program. Carl?
Thank you, sir. So just wanted to recap what progress we've made since the last meeting where we talked about our enhancements to our existing payment assistance program. Where did you click clicker? Please go ahead and go for it. So this is the slide that we shared before the meeting. We have really 4 different pieces of our payment assistance program. We're going to touch on most of these tonight. An update on payment plans, an update on what we're looking at with water fund, hardship, an update on an idea, I should say, on the city coordinated assistance program. And I'll give a brief update of where we stand on the discussions with our partners and at the state level to talk about changing potential code language to support a cap funded through rates. So really off the bat, we want to just talk about the payment plan. The recommendation at the last meeting was to see if we could structure payment plans based on arrearage. And currently our longest payment plan is 48 months. We discussed changing those payment plans to more manageable terms of 12 to 18 months. So we talked to Promise, who administers our payment plans for the organization, and they can structure limited option payment plans based on the arrearage value and maximum duration on what we set as a utility. So what we're looking at potentially is and typically what they recommend are payment plans of 12 to 18 months. And then Promise does most of the outreach to our customers, and they structure a payment plan using a formula in-house. So we put 2 examples up here on the right. This was not in the draft. We had this conversation with Promise after the draft packet went out. But a customer, for one, an example is a customer of $100, arrearage, looking at they could pick a 2-month plan, a 3-month plan, or 4-month plan to really structure their payments to be more manageable for their household. So they'd select a period and then to be on that payment plan for the maximum duration, which we're looking at around 12 to 18 months. Again, if you have a customer of $1,200, again, looking at structuring a payment plan, could be paid off in 6, 8, and 12 months. It's much like when you go to buy a car, you get a period for your loan on your car of whatever that may be, 5 to 7 years. We also talked to Promise a little bit about how they're performing outreach. We're wondering if they had any additional data that we did not have access to, but they proactively reach out to our customer base. They don't have any information behind the scenes that we could use to help provide us some more information on why we have delinquencies or what sort of what percentage of the population would fall under an affordability program. So they don't have customer data. It really relies on the customer. Promise relies on the customer giving them information, help set up these payment plans. And we also asked about Promise, potentially being a 501c3 since we're already partnered with them, but they're not a 501c3, so they cannot accept them. They would be happy to assist us with whatever we implement for our cap. But right now that's sort of for a payment plan update, I think we can structure what we talked about in the last meeting through Promise. The second piece.
Before we move on from payment plans, we had traded a couple emails about the arrearage forgiveness program. I think that I want to say it was like Pittsburgh operates. And I was wondering if you all had looked into that at all or considered whether that was something worth investigating further. I'm curious to know if it's effective at encouraging people to continue to make on-time payment.
We're still looking into it. We didn't make any progress since you shared the information. Pittsburgh Water and Sewer. They actually come up later in the discussion, but we have not yet made progress on.
Okay.
The water fund update, this is an update. This is for our potential hardship, one-time payment throughout the year. So really what we need for water fund is, this is how the discussion started. We needed a 501c3 that could accept donations to then set up a hardship program for our customers and Alexandrians. So we looked at, we had a short list that we kind of talked about as a group. We added some to that list based on our own research. And we really reached out to, these 6 organizations. There were some others here in the list that didn't make the cut. Serve is one example. They don't support our area. There's another one in Northern Virginia, but Act for Alexandria, Alive, Christchurch, Dollar Energy Fund, NVFS, and Salvation Army were all on our list. So over the past month, we've been reaching out and having meetings with each of these entities to see what they could do to support our water fund. We've been trading emails with Act for Alexandria, but based on what we understand is they really connect the donor with the cause. They would be a good advocate for what we have. When we do establish a water fund or a cap, it'd be a good marketing tool and a good outreach arm to help us support our customers. We did talk to Alive. They're more food bank focused on supporting Alexandrians, not necessarily with utilities. And they get they get references through the city's ECHS department. Christchurch, we had a long conversation with Christchurch. I've summarized those bullets in the deck, so I won't get into that now. But they have a history of supporting customers in Alexandria as well. Dollar Energy Fund was the next one on the list. They do 2 things. Dollar Energy Fund is currently Virginia American Water's hardship program provider. So they've already connected to our customers. So they, in addition to offering hardship programs, they also are set up in-house to administer a customer assistance program that we could look at having a discount on utilities that gets funded through the city or some sort of Alex New City relationship. But they already work with Virginia American Water and water reconnection assistance, disconnection, hardship for water usage. And they're the sole entity in Virginia. They also support Rappahannock Power and some other power utilities through what's called Virginia Utility Assistance Program. So under that umbrella is Virginia American Water.
Question, what does Virginia, where's the money coming from that they're providing in assistance, and what's the total dollar amount? I'd say within Alexandria's 90-some% of their customer base to, kind of what's the order of magnitude I'm trying to get of what they're doing?
For VAW, I'm not sure. We have not talked to them yet about how much they're getting through Dollar Energy, and Dollar Energy didn't share that with us. We're just trying to figure out what they could do. But that's a good follow-up question. We can certainly ask them. NVFS does offer assistance to utilities. NVFS, they're on the short list because Prince William County Service Authority uses NVFS and Serve to support their water fund, their hardship program. We're really connected into the city of Alexandria as much as Dollar Energy, Act, or Alive, or even Christchurch. And then Salvation Army, we have still yet to connect with them to host a meeting. So we're still working through that to get in contact with their Potomac division.
Salvation Army was the former organization we worked with. That
United Way.
United.
And Miles, who's here tonight, has been helping us out. If you hear his name mentioned to you through any of the groups you're involved with in the community, you'll hear the name Miles. Miles has been doing a lot of our outreach to connect with these groups and support our work on the customer assistance program and the water fund. So Dollar Energy, we knew Virginia American Water used Dollar Energy, and it made sense from us from a water fund standpoint. So we approached them with water fund in mind. They're a 501c3. They're based in Pittsburgh. They already work with 50 different utilities across the United States to support these types of programs. What we found out is Dollar Energy Fund is what VAW calls it, is the H2O fund. They do not only a hardship program, but we found out in the call, they also can administer customer assistance programs. They're set up already in-house. They use iPartner management software to structure customer assistance programs. So they have staff in-house that do this for a living. And currently one of their biggest clients is Cal Water. And they are administering their cap. I have a slide on that later in the deck we can kind of talk through. For the water fund, they take an 8.75% fee off of a donation. Each donation going out to a customer would have a fee of 8.75% to cover those types of programs. That's their administrative fee. So right now, what they do with some of their other utilities like Alcasan, Virginia American Water, Pittsburgh Water and Sewer, what they do is the funds coming in are enough to cover that fee. We would have to figure out whether or not we'd have 100% covered fee in the water fund if we use Dollar Energy, or if we would have that come out of the donation. Meaning, if you get a $100 donation, you're going to lose 8% of that when it goes back to the customer for them to administer the program. So I don't know yet legally if we could pay for that out of funds. That's something we're trying to figure out internally as well right now. So they can accept donations, and like I said, they're already set up to do this. They're already supporting other utilities across the United States. And like on the right, we just use logos. You can see this is in Connecticut, the types of populations they're serving right now with caps and sort of these hardship programs. So based in Pittsburgh, so it makes sense they're tied into Alcasan and Pittsburgh Water and Sewer. So what we did know on the call is that before the call is that they could also help with the cap. Christchurch, you know, we had Miles had a good meeting with Christchurch. You know, we found out from Christchurch that right now they don't have a lot of funding to be able to help customers, but they do have a good grassroots connection to residents of Alexandria, and they help residents with all sorts of utility bills, not just water and sewer. During the pandemic, they were assisting about 30 people per week. It's fallen off since then. Mainly food, utility, medical, and rental assistance through Christchurch, and they're leveraging the relationship with the city to get out to perform outreach and assistance. And all of this is funded by donations. And you know, they did lend some information on why we might have limited amount of Alex News customers seeking assistance. It's because we do not have shutoffs. So customers are prioritizing bills that they can pay, that they know they're not going to be penalized for not paying. So that was some information that lent to us during the discussion about, why we don't see a lot of Alex News customers going to. So update on the city coordinated customer assistance program. I passed out a flyer to all the board members. Thanks, Mr. James, for your review and comment on the flyer. We had initial discussions with the city and staff, and before we move forward with setting up the meeting, we wanted to make sure we got information of what we're proposing to do out to the city. So we put together a nicer version of talking points in this flyer. The front side really talks about, we've had these significant rate increases over the past 5 years to support River Renew. Our customer bill went up about $325 for a household using 4,000 gallons. And then had a little bit about Alex Renew on the bottom. And then on the right, we structured what I went through in the first slide of what our program currently looks like. Looking to restructure payment plans, a water fund, and then our future potential assistance program that we'd like to coordinate with the city. And those are talking points under each. And this is really meant to be as a leave behind for when we have our meetings with the city and staff or council. So I wanted to go back to Dollar Energy. As I mentioned, they can assist with the cap. On call, they can do 501c3, accept donations, They already serve our customer base in Alexandria through Virginia American Water. And they're set up to do a customer assistance program in-house already. We looked more into what they're doing in California because this is the California Waters program supported by Dollar Energy. We wanted to look into that a little bit and see what our cap might look like. So California Water, just off the top, they give a 50% bill discount based on the meter service size coming into the customer's home. And then for eligibility, you know, they're using a customer bill. I think for us, that would include renters, so we wouldn't want to have that as eligibility. Customer has to live at the address, and then they have to be enrolled in one of these qualified programs, just one. And then every 2 to 4 years, they recertify eligibility, and that comes through, if you're 65 or older, it's every 4 years. If you're younger than 65, it's every 2 years. And Dollar Energy is administering all of that. They go through and they make sure that the customer meets the eligibility criteria. They can go through and make sure the customer already complies with one of these programs. And then they can implement the customer assistance program to support that customer and give them the bill discount. We haven't talked to Cal Water to figure out how it's being funded, but the structure of the program is there already. So this got us to thinking, it gets to an idea on the last slide, is could we use Dollar Energy to give us not just support our 501c3, but also to support our customer assistance program. So on one side, Dollar Energy could help us with our 501c3, and that's funded by our opt-in and donations that we can market and promote here at Alex Renew. On the other side, they could also support our customer assistance program. How that funding mechanism gets there, we would still need to figure out. But our idea is that any eligible resident in the city limits could be qualified for this. So we'd start with your first criteria is you live in Alexandria, that gets to renters. The benefit of this is they already serve Virginia American Water. They know our customer base, they know the local nonprofits to be able to help enhance this program and get visibility on the program. It's then one entity. It's this one water idea. We have one stop shop. If you need help with your water bill, go to Dollar Energy. That's VAW, that's city, that's Alex Renew. They already have a framework established. So it's not like we have a big fee up front for them to stand up any management software, things like that, to be able to track the cap. And they're administering these programs currently throughout the United States. I think the other benefit that we learned from these initial calls is we could also leverage Christchurch, Act for Alexandria, Alive, and some of these other nonprofits to connect people to Dollar Energy, which is what they're doing currently. It's just another water Dollar Energy. We have one location then to get assistance on water bills. A lot to be worked out, just an idea. We want to present it this evening to show that we've at least made a little bit of progress since the last meeting, given everything else that we have going on. But this is where we are at the moment with the enhancement. So take questions and have a discussion or move on to audit.
A quick question. Do they charge a fee on the cap side as like they charge the 8.75% fee for donation on the water funds?
They do. There
So
would be a fee on the cap side too. So whatever funding mechanism we find to fund it, we would have to consider that there's an administration fee on it. They weren't sure what that administration fee would be because we were informed about what our program was.
Two questions. Donations to the water fund. When can we start accepting donations to the water fund?
We have to
But we have
establish
to-
a partnership and agreement with the 501c3 first.
Okay, so that's a hurdle, right?
No, I mean, I think
Yeah.
that should happen pretty quickly.
Okay.
How long would it take Dollar Energy to be up and running once we got an agreement? That's 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
This piece for them is 6 to 8 months. But we have
Well,
other things to figure out on our side to be able to, we need to figure out how to fund it.
The city moves at its own unique pace. I mean, we understand.
Well, I think what this does is this takes out administration from us or the city. It makes it easier, it's just we need to fund it. The nice thing about this is we write the criteria. Who's eligible with input from the city. And then Dollar Energy manages that. We just need to figure out how to fund that and what value to put in that fund to donate.
Now, let's say we proceed with Dollar Energy and they would be managing the fund, but how would it appear? How would it be branded to our donors? Would it be branded as Alex Renew? Or
Yes. Yeah, Dollar Energy is just if you go back to Cal Water, Lorna, go back to Cal Water. It'd be something like, Virginia American Water's H2O program. Cal Water has their own assistance program administered by Dollar Energy Fund, something like that. Be it whatever we want to call it. Water fund might not be the right name.
It's a good name.
There's other water funds, it's just confusing. But yes, it is.
The help to others is really kind of catchy, and that's nice.
So yes, whatever we decide to brand it is what we would market and brand it. And there are old logos of our water fund too that we dug up.
Very impressive progress in a short period of time.
This is great.
Well, I think, for the board, it'd be nice to get feedback on the idea. I know there's a lot of things that we need to work out with the funding mechanism, but it'd be nice to get some idea of if we'd like to kind of structure everything under one umbrella. The one piece I didn't mention is we are still making progress on crafting a legal memo on the code criteria, the code issue for accepting rate revenue to support a cap. We are still doing that research. We are working with BWWAA to get on the April agenda and get feedback from some of our partners throughout Virginia, the authorities, on whether this is something they'd also be interested in moving forward. So that's something we're still working through. We've had initial discussions with them.
Come back with specific program. Details. Question is, we're talking about the process, but I think the issue of renters is going to be a major piece of this, and we don't know how much money people are gonna donate. So I don't know whether it would be better to start out with our direct customers, kind of like there, and grow to the renters, or for example, the city is
Do you mean for the water fund or the cap?
the cap. It's start out with, even the water fund.
Yeah, he mentioned donations. So
Yeah.
sure. Okay.
Even the water fund, if you wanted to start out with people who are direct customers. Rather than renters, because you're talking about another 40,000 households, some big number like that. And we know, at least from the donations from other utilities, that it's not a very big number.
That said, renter households are often the ones who need
Yeah,
help the most. So.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
understand that.
Yeah.
I think it's to set up something where we've got, $100,000 demand and only $20,000. It's not a good place to start, starting small and growing it. In addition, the city is in the process of determining whether to provide rent relief and to fund a rent relief program. In fact, today they sent out a notice they're having a public hearing. And one of the issues I think is important for us is to weigh in with the city that utilities need to be part of that calculation and part of whatever relief is provided. So it may be that as the city heads in that direction, that's the way that our customers who are renters get assistance, is through the rent assistance program, whatever criteria the city sets up.
is that something we should add kind of to the agenda for the meeting with city staff about the cap generally? Just considering that as one way to.
I think it should be included in the meetings. I assume we're probably meeting with the mayor and clearly both those things are going to come to council. And advise it, put on the table. Here are all the pieces. I think communicating I've already talked to housing director in a formal places of about our discussions have been. And I got nods of the head of in regards to the logic of having utilities in the rent calculation. I think it's too early to know how big a program. The city has a kind of a program now, and I don't know if there are 100 households enrolled in it. I'd be surprised. And it's limited to get on a waiting list. Arlington has a program where it's anybody who meets the income criteria is eligible. They spend $8 to $10 million a year on that program. I don't know where the city is. I don't know. The city knows where it's headed in regards to how extensive the program is going to be. So I think that is going to be playing out. There's another reason they say we start small and then grow as we know more what the revenues are, what the demand is from our direct customers, and then what the city's going to be doing in regards to rent assistance.
Yeah, we need to get that data.
Well, it looks like Alive also does rent assistance. So have we talked to them directly? I guess I just wondered, I know that they partner with the city agency, but I wondered if they had if maybe that's an easier place to start too, while the stuff in the city is working itself through. Because, I mean, I don't know how many people they actually assist, but it looks like they do provide it.
I think we find out, I think they rely on the city for their making the connections.
Right. But they must already be helping a
Right.
certain group of
We
people,
can figure out what that looks like,
right?
what their numbers look like.
Because if we could start with our direct customers, like you said, because we have that data, but then maybe there's a subset we could get from Alive that are already getting assistance to sort of enhance that until we sort of figure.
I think we find that Alive is going to be one-off. The reason they they get referrals from the city is so the city can make sure that somebody's not tapping this organization, that organization, that organization. Rather, it's at least coordinated, so there's some triaging of what people who really need it. So the folks who are, whether it's Christchurch or Alive, have some sense as to that somebody's already vetted the need, and they don't. They rely on volunteers largely. And so that is the time those volunteers have to spend trying to sort through that. The city staff has already done that. But I think there is merit in kind of like, do we start small and start local and see how it goes and then grow from there.
Mr. Carr, what guidance do you need from the board tonight and a week from now at our board meeting? Any guidance, or you know what your next steps are?
No, I think we would like, we put out an idea. I think the idea is really structuring our fund. If we're gonna take a 501c3, it makes sense to select Dollar Energy as our 501c3, at least for the water fund. And they also have the added benefit of being able to administer a cap. I think that coupled with them already serving our customer base through VAW, and it's a known name, and they know our customers, they know the area. I think that's what I think is the value to proceed. I think, the idea of structuring this is probably a board decision, but the 501c3, I think we'd probably want to move forward with would be Dollar Energy, at least for the water fund. I mean, that's how this discussion started. The added benefit of cap is really nice.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Even if they charge fees to administer it, I mean, doing it in-house also has costs. So it could end up being less.
Yeah.
I might reach out to some colleagues that work with like community-based organizations in some of the other cities that are served by it, just to see like if they've had any complaints from folks about trying to interact with it, or if it's been a good experience, just to try to find out. But in theory, I think it makes a lot of sense for one entity to handle it.
The F&A committee want to make a recommendation?
So, what do I make a motion to recommend that the city, proceed with discussions with Dollar Energy
For the water.
for the water fund.
Board approves that, then
We'll go.
okay.
It's not a board meeting, but
Motion,
yeah,
and seconded, I assume.
Yeah.
much more.
Okay, saying aye, so, okay, you got it.
It's unanimous, by the way, by the committee.
Absolutely.
Discuss it, we'll discuss that.
I think if, you know, feedback on the other piece of looking at the cabinet more seriously, I think we can talk to Dollar Energy and get more details around what that would look like. It's just how do we frame it and fund it?
Yeah.
That's if we can put something together and then go talk to the city, we thought that would be, you know, just as, you know, kind of adding it, you know, to the flyer, we can structure this program. It's not going to be a burden on you necessarily to manage. It might help as well.
True. I had one other question back to one of your earlier slides. That is the payment plans. And that, would this apply to all folks who are delinquent or just the ones who do not yet have payment plans or who are not compliant?
Anyone who signs up to a payment plan would be offered those payment.
But if somebody already has one,
They've already been structured that way, but it's for a longer duration, 48 months.
so we won't have anybody who's gonna have to pay more than we've already agreed to give. Okay, any further discussion on this topic? And then we'll move on to our annual comprehensive financial report and audit.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tonight, we'll be talking about the annual comprehensive financial report for FY 2023, as well as FY 2023 audit results. Before I get any further into it, there's just some folks I would like to acknowledge, because there was a lot of time and effort really putting this together. Ms. Jennifer Hobbs, who is our independent auditor, will be talking more and giving us briefing about the audit result shortly. Mr. Jeff Wolf from MSL, we uses his service for audit accounting and audit services for us. And the rest of the accounting team, if you don't mind just standing, introducing yourself.
Hey, no, I'm Jason Moore. I am the accounting manager here at Alex.
Hello, I'm Shawnette Hurley. I'm the senior accountant.
I'm Sunny Ari, I'm the staff accountant.
I'm Barbara Reeve and I do accounts payable.
Thank you. Just wanted the base with you all. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and get started on tonight's presentation. Again, primarily covers two main topics: the annual comprehensive financial report, popularly known as the ACFA report, as well as the FY 23 audit results. I'm sure most of you are very familiar, at the very least have heard about the ACFA report. But in essence, what exactly is the ACFA report? Pretty much, the ACFA report are a set of financial statements for local government entities, municipalities who abides by accounting requirement set and established by the Governmental Accounting Standard Board, popularly known as the GASB. For lack of a better term, GASB are like the feds of accounting rules and regulation, just making sure things line up accordingly. The ACFA report, again, audited by an independent auditor. Ms. Jennifer makes sure our financial statements are in line and in compliance. The ACFA report consists of three main sections: the introductory sections, which pretty much orients the reader just about the report. The financial sections talks about the financial situation of the organization. and statistical section, which provides additional financial and statistical reports about the organization and trends and things of that nature. The audit, one of the main reasons why we do the audit, one, it's an actual requirement. Like I said, we want to make sure our financial statements are presented fairly. Again, it's a detailed examination of our financial statements. Again, to validate what we've stated so far, all right. It also provides credibility, again, to our report, and also gives our ratepayer confidence or any other investors in regards to our financial report and things that we stated. This is one of the many things that the GFOA looks at on an annual basis and presents an award to us. And I'm pleased to announce that as for the FY23, that Alex Renew got another award, another financial award for reporting and financial statement from the GFOA. So that's, believe, I want to say how many years consecutively. I don't know the top of my head, but
Like 14 or so.
yes, that's in the double figures, which is a huge accomplishment just on how we've presented and continue to present our financial statement. The audit, with Ms. Jennifer will talk more about, you pretty much have 4 opinions or outcomes. You want the clean and unmodified opinion. That's really where you want to stay at. The rest, you really don't want to know much about it, but they do exist. The next 3 are pretty much like if you do not if you do not, like I said, just conform with the rules and regulations set by the GASB, you fall into one of those outcome or categories, depending how significant that is. Again, this is for fiscal year FY23, which starts from July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. The audit team, I just introduced them shortly. Again, Ms. Jennifer will be talking more about the audit results shortly. Overall, our audit result, we continue to maintain a clean and unmodified opinion. Again, what exactly does that mean? Meaning, as we presented our financial statement throughout the year, when it was audited, the independent auditor agreed with how everything was stated, saying it was fairly stated and there is no misleading or confusion about our financial report. We had no significant internal control material weaknesses. That's also a big deal. Again, that's not to say we didn't have some recommendations from the auditors, which we did have some recommendations, all of which that we agree with them, we've discussed with them, and we've established processes in place for about 90% of those recommendations, with the last item being in place by December 31st, meaning next year, we are very hopeful those recommendations will be satisfied and will not be listed as a recommendation. Another audit that we do is the single audit. This is pretty much because of the federal loans that we do have as a result of the River Renew project. There are certain guidelines and criteria we have to follow, making sure we are spending the money for the intended purpose. And again, we had a clean audit on that. At this point, I am going to turn over to Ms. Jennifer, who's just going to give us a briefing about the audit results, and I'll come back and we'll talk about the actual report where we ended up for you. And
I would not be a good auditor if I didn't have paper to hand out. I believe everything that you are receiving are copies of what you've already been given.
Yep.
In advance, but I wanted to make sure everyone had a copy. You guys want to share one? Thanks. Thank you all for having me, inviting me this evening to present the audit results. This is our moment, all the hard work. Thank you for allowing YFB to be of service to Alex Renew again this year. It has been a pleasure. I'd like to say Lake and Jason and the entire team.
and Jeff for all of their hard work going into the audit process. It is a lot of work in any normal environment. It's a lot harder when you have the significant changes in staff that you've had this year. So thank you all. They have done a great job. I bet they've learned a lot about Alex Renew through the process of the audit, which I think will give them a lot of foundational knowledge to go into this next year to be even better in their roles within the organization. So what I have presented, what I have passed out for you are some of the highlights of the audit process, mainly the opinions that we issue. It was a very clean, a very successful audit overall. We are complete with the signing of a representation letter. Everything will be dated and ready for release. So a few of the things that I wanted to go over. If you get into the packet, the first thing is the independent auditor's report. Of this entire process, these 3 pages are what I actually produce. The financial statements, and it explains this to the readers of your financial statements. The financial statements are the responsibility of management. My responsibility is to make sure that they are materially stated, whether due to error or fraud, and to issue an opinion on the presentation of them. So as Lake mentioned, he will present the ACFR to you because that's his document. That's your document. This is a clean, unmodified opinion, the best that you can receive for the organization. In addition to normal auditing standards, government auditing standards, we also do all of our audits in accordance with the Virginia specifications for audits of authorities, boards, and commissions. So you'll see that extra compliance requirement pop up throughout a couple of these reports. Otherwise, the opinion is a very standard opinion. Management's responsibilities, auditor's responsibilities, and then it goes through some of the required information that is in your report. The next item that I've included, as Lake mentioned, is the single audit report package. This is in addition to your financial statement audit. It's the compliance of your primarily a WIPIA funding. So as you go through here, the first page is our report on internal control over financial reporting compliance. Internal controls are the responsibility of management. We do not audit the entity's internal controls, but we do assess them and we look at them and we test them throughout the audit process. Either one, to plan and perform, to execute the audit appropriately, and then 2, on this end, for the compliance with grants, loan documents, agreements, to make sure that the compliance requirements are met. The second page is a report on compliance for each major federal program. So we look at each source of award, each grant, each loan, each project funding that you have that is federal money, whether it's direct or tax through. And we look at that to test the major compliance requirements to make sure that you've met those and check those boxes. This is also a clean opinion. We had no findings or recommendations as it relates to those programs. After you get through some of the opinions with the single audit package, you'll find a page that actually has some numbers on it. And it's page 6 on the bottom of that page. It details out the type of funding that you have. The first and the most significant being the WIPIA money of $28 million. So that was the focus of most of our work, to making sure that you've met all the requirements for the use of those funds. Generally speaking, it's allowable cost, period performance, reporting requirements, those type of things. And we had no findings or issues with that information this year. And then there's a notes page on page 7, but if you look at page 8, the schedule of findings and question cost, this is a summary form that outlines first the top half in section 1, the summary of auditor's results. The first piece is the financial statement audit. So it lets the reader know if they were to only look at this package and not the full ACFR, they would know that we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. They would know that we did not issue any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies as it relates to the financial statement audit. And then non-compliance material to the financial statements, that's also answered no. Though these are required to be disclosed. So if we had any of that in the process, it would be on this sheet as well. The second little grouping of this schedule is the federal awards piece. So the top half, financial statements. The next section is just the federal award package. Same type of questions. Did we find any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies just related to the federal awards? And these are also no as well. And then the type of compliance issued is unmodified, which is also clean. We had no findings. And then we identify what major programs the entity had that we tested. For some organizations, they'll have a page or two of different type of federal programs. For Alex Renew, you really just have one big program. And then sections 2, 3, and the fourth section there, all are none because we have no findings or question costs to report. So it's a very simple, straightforward presentation. Any questions on those two?
Any questions of Ms. Files?
Can I just ask one, please? The report of audit results, can I go over that? This is, the report of audit results to the audit committee. I know we did not have any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses or internal controls. However, you did identify, I think, 5 or 6 instances where we could do better.
Yes, sir.
Could you spend a moment kind of going through how we could do better in each of those 5 areas or 6 areas, I think? Starting with capital asset and accrued expense reconciliation.
Yes. So if you flip ahead to about the 5th page from the back.
Okay, I'll follow along. Go ahead.
Okay. If you flip from the back, there is a page that is addressed to management and the board on letterhead. It starts with in planning and performing the audit page. This is what we call a management letter, a recommendation letter.
Okay.
So I guess to begin, when it comes to internal controls, there are 3 main levels of deficiencies of recommendations. The highest and most severe is a material weakness. The next layer down is a significant deficiency. And then finally below that, you have a control deficiency, a general deficiency. If you look at the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th paragraphs in this letter, it defines to the reader what those different levels are and what they mean.
Yep. Yeah.
It ultimately comes down to whether or not, you have an environment, your accounting department, they try to separate preparation and review functions, have one person prep, someone else review, in all different functions and facets of the finance department to help ensure that errors or fraud does not slip through to your financial report. Sometimes in the control environment, those pieces either aren't in place at all, they are in place, but maybe have the occurrences that the prep, the review, the oversight didn't catch something. Or some, if they work at SAB 10, like everything gets caught, prevented, or detected before it hits your financial statements. So that's ultimately the goal. Now, with any organization, you have to look at the cost benefit of everything you do. You can put a robust internal control environment in place and prevent or detect any error from ever happening, but it's going to be very expensive to do that. On the reverse end, the other end of that, you don't want to have so few controls in place that big errors pop through undetected. So an organization needs to design a control environment that is balanced for your organization. Prevent and detect the best you can, but don't spend so much that either the process never gets completed because it's just hard to complete, or the cost far exceeds the benefit of ever, doing that control in the first place. So these things through the process, we identified a couple of areas this year that we gave the lake and the management team suggestions to improve the control environment. Now, some of these things, they may have been lingering, but you had significant changes in staffing this year. There may have been compensating controls in place in the past, and those controls didn't roll over to the new staff and policy and process and the day-to-day procedures. So as we were going through here, you mentioned the capital asset and accrued expense reconciliation process. Historically, fixed assets, brace yourself, was only reconciled and closed out once a year at year end. It's the way it's always been.
Sure.
There is risk and reward to that. One, you don't have to do it on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, so it saves time. On the other end, it takes longer to close and to reconcile at year end because you're closing an entire year. There's no right or wrong as to which way you do it. It's up to management to determine what the best process is for them. And historically, and through this process, it has been once a year at year end. I think your team, I won't speak, you can chime in as much as you want. I don't love an annual reconciliation process because it does take longer and it's ultimately harder to go back and find things and change things. And I think this year you see that with the change in staff. It was easier when you have consistent staffing for an entire year. It's easier to go back and see what happened 12 months ago, 11 months ago, 10 months ago. You either recall it or you have support for it. You have an email from it. That changes when your staff changes.
Okay.
The accrued expense process kind of goes in with that because there is a year-end process in place to capture any expenses that have been incurred but not paid yet. That happens with every organization at year-end to make sure that you have a good cutoff of your accrued expenses, accounts payable. The process didn't change this year from any years past, but what did happen is in the implementation of that process, there was an invoice that got accrued twice.
Yeah.
It did not get paid. There was a control feature that would have stopped that from happening had it gone down that process. But the way that the daily process worked gave an environment that allowed it to get booked twice. We identified it, we worked through it. Everything's okay. It's not material to the financial statements as a whole, but it did occur.
Yeah.
So I think the management team has thought through the process of how to make that process stronger and better going forward for year end next year.
Yeah.
Now that is the accrued expense piece is just a year end piece. They're not doing that on a monthly basis to that same scope and degree because you really want to make sure that the year end cutoff at June 30th is as accurate as possible for your report.
Yeah, in reading this very carefully, it does, by the way, Jennifer, it's a great summary. I learned a lot. Thank you. It does seem, as I read this, that there seem to be sort of areas of sort of separation of duties sort of things where, we're a small operation, so separating duties is hard, right? You have a limited number of people. You can't have two people doing the same thing, right?
That's correct, yes.
But I think we'll develop a solution to that. Okay.
All of these things, I think, can be achieved in a small finance department. It's just, my advice is always to separate prep and review as best you can. So even though it may be a little more difficult in a small environment, it is still possible to have stronger controls. And there might be some areas that take a higher precedent over others or higher priority over others based on what you're going through. You have a major project that you're in the middle of, fixed assets and the accrued expense at year end piece might be more important to you now than it ever has been, you know, in the 5 years leading up to this. Journal entries on the following page, and making sure that there's a prep and review process for that. As more journal entries happen, just in the nature of how things are recorded, having that review process is important just to make sure that someone's looking at them timely. A lot of organizations will do a journal entry review process, but it won't be done monthly or quarterly. It's kind of after the fact, but that's a detection control. It can help offset it can mitigate other controls that you don't have in place on a prevention side, because someone's looking at the content, the underlying documents, whatever support was used to create the journal entry. It's a detective control, and journal entry review can catch a lot of different things.
If I understand it correctly from what you told us, that every one of these that is listed in this report, you have a plan, either you have or you soon will be addressing these and in a sense fixing them.
Absolutely. I'd like to just talk a little bit about things that we've done and put in place in discussion with Ms. Jennifer about what we are planning to do. So starting with the fixed asset, that was a very, very labor intensive process, what the previous process was. But again, with the benefit of you had the same core group of people doing it, it was a little easier for them. So it was a little easier, just with the institutional knowledge they had. But once they walked out of the door, it was a little bit of a challenge because we had to figure what was done previously so that we make sure what we did now was in line and not really misstated or really different than what's being done differently. So one of the things accounting manager Jason has implemented is the fixed asset will be done on a monthly basis going forward. The benefit of that is, one, it's cleaner. You don't have to wait till the end of the year and try to figure things out. We have all supporting documents required right when it happened every month. Any clarification questions about an asset, those are known upfront, because this was a lot of things we had to deal with at the end of the year where we had to go back and try to track steps and those things. Another one is the account receivable reporting. So this was pretty much a specific type of report we get from our third-party billing company, and we've been getting the same report at least for the last 5 years. This report summarizes the monthly billing at a customer class level, commercial, residential, whatever, by the customer class. One of the requirements was to get the same report at a detailed customer level, at the customer name within each of those class. The new third-party vendor that we now have will and can produce that report on a monthly basis going forward. So we will have that detailed monthly reconciliation. I'm sure Ms. Jennifer will be happy about that coming next year when we're going through this audit. But just even more so, that's a very good and strong tool to have in place internally to see exactly in detail what was billed, who got billed. Not to say that report really did not exist in the past, but it was never provided to us even after several attempts by the third-party vendor. So we're very excited that the new third-party company will provide us with that, will provide that to us going forward. The journal of entry, separating the prep versus review. Again, Jason, our accounting manager, has implemented a workflow process where all journal entry goes on the workflow now and gets reviewed by him. So in other words, nobody could just put in a journal entry and get posted automatically to highlight and touch on what Ms. Jennifer said, separating the prepare from the review. We now have a process in place for that. The accrual where we double accrued an invoice. So again, we've changed that process going forward at year end, where any accrual at the year end will be substantiated or supported by either an actual invoice, a pro forma invoice, or a substantiated document that supports the actual entry, so that we're just not going off of an email and may accidentally, like I said, book the same entry all over again. Again, this we were able to correct it just the following month. It wasn't material, and there was never a risk that we were going to pay that twice. But we now have process in place to eliminate that going forward. Last but not the least was the unclaimed property. We did receive a check for about $650. We have kind of like an informal SOP in place, but we are working to formalize that policy going forward so that any unclaimed property check will follow suit, and then we'll be able to state those as is. So again, we agree with everything that was recommended. We've implemented an answer solution to all of those, again, with the exception of the unclaimed property, which we plan to wrap up by December 31st, 2023 this year.
How much of your staff is new this year?
Myself and Jason too. Right?
As a percent.
That's pretty impressive. You were able to still get this done and together. And
We have such a strong team in place. They were very, very helpful. Jason actually in the past has worked with us on a consultant basis, so that was helpful. Mr. Jeff Wolf was extremely helpful because he helps us significantly putting the act together. So we really had some good sources in place, and just thank you all.
And to let you know, when we encounter significant change within an organization, any finance department, but especially two very important positions, we as a firm, as a team, look at that very closely. We want to make sure that a lot of times new people will come in and they will make changes, and that changes the control environment and changes the processes. I think that the timing of them coming into the organization, not a lot of significant changes before year end. But I think now you're going to see the improvements in the policy and process changes for this next fiscal year. But we look at that. We look at the control environment with any change surrounding that to make sure that things aren't inadvertently missed or changed. A lot of times organizations will not have written procedures on what someone does in a job description. They just do it every single month because that's their job and that's what they do. When they leave, you run the risk of some function not being done because it wasn't written for the next person to take on that. So we look for all of that, and we incorporate that into our risk assessment, and we incorporate it into our testing process.
Any further questions about the issues we've been discussing in regards to process part of this audit? Well, we appreciate while you're getting the painting the moving train, if you will, making the changes and improvements. While we're still working on document for that. Well, do you have any further?
No, we have the census. We look at the census data that goes into the VRS to make sure you're in compliance with that. We have no findings or issues with that. Your finance and HR department did a great job of getting information and doing that. There's also the allocation of expenses. That report is in here. It is also a clean opinion so that we look at that information and which joint costs are allocated. Management does prepare that allocation as well. And then before the very last piece of that, you have our required communications. For those of you who have been through this process with me before, it is very standard language. If you have any questions on it, let me know. I'll be happy to go through any piece of it with you or answer any questions you have with it. But it talks about, you know, management's accounting estimates, what estimates are in the financial statements so that you're aware of those. We do look at them in the process. We agree with the estimates and the underlying assumptions and information that they've done to compile those estimates. We had no disagreements with management, no difficulties performing the audit. Any of those things would be disclosed here, but you would know of that before we got to this meeting if we had any issues with the audit process. We've included a copy of all of the journal entries that were done through the audit process. The bulk of these really relate to just the timing of the process. We need a trial balance from your finance department pretty close to year end so that we can do our risk assessment and our planning process and calculate our materiality. And while we're doing the planning process, they're still closing year end. So some of these things are things that they've completed during that close process while we're doing our planning process. But they're there so you can see the entries that were made. The big one is the fixed asset entry that is done every year to move things. They are captured within expense accounts throughout the year and then reclassified to CIP into fixed assets at year end. So that's why there is a large entry is normal. I would expect if they move to a monthly or quarterly process, that entry will be much smaller next year, both line items and by dollar, because it will only be for the last month or last quarter, not the entire fiscal year. And then management letter. And then the last piece of that is I've attached a copy of the representation letter. This is the last piece of our process that we will ask Justin Lake to sign, representing that they've given us everything. They haven't lied to us, that everything's been provided that we asked for, and that will conclude our process. So I've included a copy so that you can see what that representation management is to us at the end of the process. But all in all, it was a very successful process, and I do want to commend the team, especially with a new members. We're still on schedule. We're on time. We generally report at your November meeting. So for them to be able to do that without the legacy knowledge is really impressive. So thank you guys. Thank you, everyone.
Also would like to add, which was very, very helpful to us, Ms. Jennifer and her team provided a detailed information of what was submitted prior year. So that gave us a lot of information to go back, not only what was submitted prior year, but the format and those questions. So that was very helpful. Thanks for your time.
Good to hear. Other questions at this point? I've got one. I had to give the staff a whole list of questions. Gone through a lot of wonky details.
Enjoyable.
Wonky. All depends on your point.
When it involves a clean opinion, they're all enjoyable.
Oh, yes, yes.
And that is one of the things that sometimes gets lost in governmental audits is kind of very high level. How did we end up? We've talked in prior meetings about, the preliminary estimates were we had somewhere, subject to adjustments and subject to year-end changes and about $7 million left over. So maybe you'd ask staff to explain kind of when you kind of boil all these numbers down and get to a very high level cost left. What were the results?
So overall, just to summarize it, put it in layman's term, is we ended up drawing using about $8 million from our cash reserve to fund whatever difference we have from our revenue and cash. That number, actually, that $8 million will have been a lot more significant than that, to the tune of about $14 million. But because of the opportunities that was realized within the wastewater charge revenue, we had about a $4 million surplus in that category, as well as the primary debt service, meaning we did not incur as much debt as we anticipated, so we didn't pay that much interest and principal. We also had like a surplus there of about 2.4 million. So that nets out, those two primarily nets out to a little bit over $6 million and help reduce that $14 million cash to about $8 million.
Is it correct? The 14 was budgeted to be used from our fund balance to support capital projects. So what you're saying is we didn't have to use as
We didn't
much
have
of
to use
it.
it. Yes,
So
sir.
we now have 6 that we hadn't planned on. That in effect, which we deal in a number of months with fiscal 25. We'll have that money to probably focus on helping with funding capital projects. Since it's good money to have, but it's one-time money left over from the year. So matching it with a one-time expense like capital is kind of common in the kind of, what do you do with surplus in governments?
Sir.
Or we would write rebates, like the state just did. Write checks back to every one of our rate payers. I don't think so.
We're not out of the woods yet.
No.
So yes, and that pretty much from a high level standpoint just highlights the FY 23 ACFA report. I mean, you have the details in there. Any other questions you may have about it, please let Justin know. Sure, Justin.
Any further questions, comments on the audit? I'd just like to thank first Ms. Files, the work that you've done, the clear explanations you've made, and I thank our finance director and his staff, who were, fortunately, when you were talking, they were nodding. So you don't want the head going the different direction when they're sitting behind you. So really appreciate the work. I know it's at the end of the year, you're doing your regular job, the day-to-day job, and then you're trying to produce this voluminous report and get everything down to the last dollar correctly. And it's hard work. So we deeply appreciate it.
I think we should give them a round of applause. Whole team, auditors and support and the team and the new CEO and the new finance director. I mean, it's incredible.
Thank you.
And it's on time.
And thank you for bringing the team. I know that it's late and they probably didn't want to be here, but it's nice to see faces. So.
All of our work begins with finance.
I think probably one last piece of business, and that is a motion for our committee to recommend that the chair receive and accept the annual audit report and related materials.
Moved and seconded.
Okay, any other business to come for this committee? No? It's a motion to adjourn.
Moved and seconded.
Move and second. They are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah.
And the board members stay around for just 1 minute. I've got to catch